Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of what is our Raw Reaction show, talking to you the day after Arsenal's win against Burnley in the Premier League. I've got some apologies to make. Of course, you guys know this because there was no show this morning at 8 a.m. This show is coming to you at 8:30 p.m. UK time. It was actually going to be quite ironically, and I kind of did it on purpose, that it was going to be 8 tonight, and I'll tell you in a second why I'm half an hour late, and it's kind of a mad story actually. But it's not that mad. It's completely trivial. But I was at an out in London yesterday. It was a friend's kind of leaving party. They're going off to America to start a new job, which is quite cool, which was great. But we were staying in an Airbnb which had awful Wi-Fi, and I just simply did not have the hotspot either. So I made the call to delay it, and so we're here this evening doing the show instead. Now it was going to be at 8, and I ordered my dinner to arrive about 6, knowing I had enough time. Anyway, I ordered one pizza. It arrives at 8:10, so 10 past 8 in the end. I know it was going to be late because I'd rang up already. And instead of just a pizza to say sorry, they give me a pizza, garlic bread, cannolis, chicken wings, 2 bottles of Diet Coke, a Fanta, and they've said that next time I order, I can get a whole free meal as well. Now, I'm not really one for freebies, really, unless it's like a code for a VPN service or something like that. But when it comes to specifically that, I was like, this is just silly. I'm on my own, A, and B, I'm on a diet, so makes no sense. So I just ate my pizza, and all the rest is going to get probably cold. I'll see if the neighbours want it, maybe. But yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. Anyway, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. And again, apologies for the tardiness on my part of the show. Don't worry, I will be here tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. to round up all the latest news, which, to be honest, I think is going to be more of an extension on what we've discussed already in this show, because what will happen in the next 12 hours before I do the next show, I'm not quite sure. But sure, we will still be here at 8 a.m. Arsenal beating Burnley yesterday. I suppose what I can do, and what the benefit of doing today's show slightly later, is that we get a better view of what the Premier League looks like. We get a greater view of what has happened over the course of this weekend, because of course we've now got Sunday's games having been completed, and we can also talk about the evening's entertainment at Stamford Bridge as well, which we will do. But first of all, we need to go straight into specifically the game that Arsenal played on Saturday, even though I feel like it's not even like the best part of today's show is talking about the Arsenal game. There's like other things I'm even more excited to talk about. But Arsenal 3, Burnley 1, a very important win to continue that momentum. Of course, Arsenal defeat at Newcastle last week was really disappointing. We all know that the game went against us in ways that we can't control. And managers like, I don't know, Mauricio Pochettino came out and said that you got to kind of, you got to respect the referees, and that he would never, ever run onto a football field, never question a referee's decision with anything other than pure anger. But yes, we were obviously robbed in that game. We all know the situation that transpired in St. James's Park. But it was important that after not only the Sevilla game, that we were able to kind of build upon that. And, there's upheaval in the squad. We've got continuous injury problems still. No Martin Odegaard. Of course, Eddie Nketiah was back, but he was on the bench. And, we had to make do. I say make do. That makes it really sound quite harsh as to who was playing. We have to expect, the top performances from those players that come in and replace. And Arteta decided to go with, again, Trossard up top at centre forward. We had Saka and Martinelli and Kai Havertz playing in the Odegaard role. And there were some performances that stood out, and we're going to talk about them, and there's some performances that didn't. But to go more into the specifics, we start with the first goal scorer, Leandro Trossard, showing both bravery and consistency. We are seeing consistency from Leandro Trossard in a centre-forward position. That's 2 goals in 2 games and a header. I'm not sure if I can remember Leandro Trossard scoring a header, not just for Arsenal, but ever. So a really good finish, and a very brave one as well, because, of course, he was very hurt after he did score that goal. He collided with the post, and it really did feel like in the stadium, it was such a weird one. Like, we'd scored, and it was like the crowd didn't really realise we'd scored, and then celebrated, and then realised that Trossard was hurt, and he went very quiet again, as we hoped that it wasn't serious, and thankfully it wasn't. It could, there's a real chance he could have broken his arm in that moment. Posts, they're metal poles. They are quite solid things, and so when you collide at them with speed, and when you've also been shunted into it as well by James Trafford, who of course was only doing what he could to try and stop the goal. He wasn't impeding or doing anything wrong to Trossard in that way. It was just kind of an unfortunate situation, but a fantastically brave finish from him, and another goal playing at centre forward. And I thought overall it was another good performance. And of course, that wasn't his only contribution to the game, because his cross set up William Saliba as well from a corner. And it was a game in which we saw kind of the best parts of William Saliba, in the sense of we can see what he does in the opposition box with the header from the corner, which is very towering and powerful and everything that you expect from him. But also there was a chance when Burnley went through and he slid in with a fantastic challenge as well. That's 2-2. I remember the game against Sevilla where he had a fantastic sliding challenge in that one. It's the speed, the recovery that he has was really, really good. And so we saw the best of William Saliba. And I think that, this kind of iteration of what we're seeing of the player is that there is not really anyone that can hold a candle to him at the moment. He's absolutely unbelievably good. And we're so incredibly lucky to have him. So incredibly lucky to have William Saliba. So overall, I was overjoyed with his performance once again, and the example that he continues to show to the rest of his teammates. We have, though, to talk about Alexander Zinchenko. Zinchenko was utterly exceptional on the day. His numbers from the game, when you look at, I know his goal was fantastic, and when you're coming out with a flying kick of a strike like Zinchenko had in that moment, that's obviously going to take all of the attention away from anything else. And it was a fantastic finish. But even without the goal, we can talk about the performance, because a lot of the talk around Zinchenko on the football field has been about, that he's not necessarily as good as he maybe has been for us. He's not as influential as he has been. That Tomiyasu seems like the more obvious choice right now if everybody is fit. And that if Jurrien Timber was, of course, fit, then maybe he would be starting, because Zinchenko's not necessarily been as good as what we've come to expect from the Ukrainian international. However, let me read through these metrics for you. Most touches, 116. Most passes into the final third, 45. I'm going to read that for you one more time, just so it really sinks in. Most passes into the final third. It's a progressive pass into the attacking third, the defensive third of the opposition's field. 45 times. Incredible. Most final third entries, so that's him taking the ball into the final third, 17 times. Most duels won. Now, these are the stats that I'm actually most impressed by, because Zinchenko gets a lot of scrutiny for his defensive work. He gets a lot of scrutiny for what he does in his own defensive third, and that we always talk about how there's vulnerabilities in our game with Zinchenko there. So most duels won, 14. Most aerial duels won. Aerial duels, 7. Most tackles with 5 as well. Absolutely fantastic performance. A really much needed performance. I spoke to him after the game as well, and you're going to get some of those quotes a little bit later on tonight. And he obviously has a very, very important international break coming up, because Ukraine face Italy in a playoff. One that would be massive, and hopefully he and Ukraine win that. I would much rather see Ukraine at the next European Championship tournament. So I look forward to that. Not because I'm a salty England fan at all that was knocked out by Italy in the final. There was a bit of a downer in the game, and that was obviously the red card. It didn't really have a bearing on the game in the end, or the scoreline, or even the performance of either team. But Fabio Vieira, of course, saw red for a red card challenge. Like, I can't have any complaints about this. I can't have any frustrations about this. It was a red card. It's as plain and simple as that. Fabio Vieira deserved to be sent off. I would be asking for a red card if it was another player of another team, or one of our players, and it's a red card. He's gone in. He's late. He's missed the ball completely. His stud's down, or on another player on their knee, which is never a place you really want to get a contact and impact injury in. It was completely innocent. I don't think there's any maliciousness about it. I think that's important to stress. There's no maliciousness about that challenge. It's just a really, it's just one of those things, unfortunately. And he missed the ball and connected with the player, and deserved the sending off. But yet another. I know red cards and Arteta are associated quite a bit, and that's our second red card this season. Bearing in mind we didn't have any red cards last season. We've had 2 this year. Obviously, I don't think Tomiyasu deservedly was red. But this one certainly was. But I think that we have still got over that. I don't think that Arsenal should be associated with being a dirty team that gets red cards here, there, and left and right or whatever, because I think we have grown out of that habit. And the red cards we have got have been, in this case, a little bit unlucky. Not because it wasn't a red, but just because of the situation. And then, of course, the Tomiyasu one, I don't think is a red card. So, yeah, I don't think it is necessarily too bad of a situation to be concerned about. Now, I enjoyed a lot of what I heard from Mikel Arteta after the game. You probably had the opportunity of reading or seeing some of his comments that he made. He was asked about Fabio Vieira's red card, and he was very, very poignant in making sure that we, as journalists and as commentators, talk about the red card. He says, and he was asked about the Vieira card. He says, "I'm really happy with the result, especially with the performance after playing 72 hours ago with the last 3 games. How we played against Newcastle, how we played against Sevilla, how we played today, how dominant we were against teams who are very hard to dominate." And the amount of situations that we dominated, I think we fully deserved to win the game. With the red card, yes. Thank you for asking me. VAR was right. And the referee was right. Really good decision. Really positive from Mikel to speak about that. Good decision. It's great. I love it. I absolutely adore it. I like the fact that he's embodying a little bit of the villain, because he is a bit of a villain to the rival fans and some pundits as well. And I don't mind him doing that. I don't mind him doing that. I know some people don't necessarily like the whole siege mentality and, the world against Arsenal and stuff like that. But I do genuinely think that Arteta is that type of coach that can use these situations to his benefit, that he can use the fact that the world's against Arsenal and can use that to motivate players. I love the sarcasm. I love the childishness of it. I really do like it. Some people won't, and I absolutely empathize with your points of view. And I know that people have different views on everything. But I like this. I really do like this. And call me petulant, and I am, and I can be very petty myself, as many will know. But I quite liked that from Arteta. So yeah, if you haven't watched the interview post match or haven't been able to catch the post-match press conference, I recommend that you do, because it was great, and it was really, really good to see. He was asked about Ben White. Of course, Ben White was missing from the game. Very frustrating for us. He said yesterday in training he was uncomfortable. He didn't look right, but Ben won't give you much. He always wants to be on the pitch and always wants to hide anything that is in there. But we highlighted it. We noticed in the last few weeks as well something in there, and we wanted to protect him today. It was the right call from the physios and the medical department, and tomorrow we will assess him and understand what's happening. So hopefully everything's fine. I think Arteta sums it up perfectly. Ben White is a player that, as we know, will hide things. He will play through pain. He will not bring up injuries because he just thinks he's Superman. He can do whatever he wants. And I like that quality, but it is also a risky quality. It can be a naive quality, and you need to protect the player. And I think the club did manage to do that. On Ødegaard, he says, "I don't know. I'm going to have a meeting now with the medical department to understand everybody's situation. I think he's going to be back after the international break, but I don't know exactly what the decision is and the communication at the moment." So we're still awaiting updates on Ødegaard and what's going on with him. Hopefully, this situation resolves itself very quickly, and we can have him back after the international break. He's not expected to take part with the Norway national side, so he's got a couple of weeks to fully recover, and hopefully we'll have Ødegaard back for this run of games in a couple of weeks' time. But yes, that's Arteta. Now, if you're listening on audio, there was a pause there just so I could smile for a brief moment. Because sometimes things are best appreciated when you say nothing and you can just look at the despair and the tears and the realization that maybe, just maybe, Tottenham Hotspur aren't as good as what other people might think that they are. That just quite possibly that they aren't title challengers, that despite the fact that they have been raved about as this incredible side that are being coached and managed by arguably the greatest human to ever exist, who has never done anything wrong, has never contradicted himself once in a press conference, not once. And despite all of those things, Arsenal are currently above them in the table, is is where we're at with that one. So unlucky Spurs. I really have wound Spurs fans up over the last fair few days. I know a couple of articles that have gone, I don't want to say viral, but I'm talking like a tweet of mine got 1.8 million engagements. Like, that's stupid. And the reason it got that many engagement is because it was shared by a silly number of Spurs supporters. I did another one, an article talking about how kind of Arsenal been robbed of the Manager of the Month award, which is a bit tongue-in-cheek piece, and then also a little bit like, come on, seriously? And that was, I got something like 800,000 kind of views on it. I'm absolutely mental. But you just got to enjoy it. You just got to enjoy the fact that the elephant is falling from the top of the tree. And I've been saying for quite some time that luck can and always will run out eventually, because they have been lucky. They've been incredibly lucky. So fortuitous is what they have been. And I'm so happy that it's being exposed. That yes, they've lost key players like Maddison and Romero and Van der Ven, and it's taken them to lose those players before they've slipped up. But let's be real, they've deserved to slip up way earlier than this. Sheffield United at home, the Liverpool VAR controversy, scraping through against a Luton side that could not hit a cow's backside with a banjo, if that's the saying. I think it is. When it was like an open goal and Adebayo missed it from like 2 yards. They have been so lucky. So lucky. And so it was so gloriously perfect. And I'll be very honest, in that press lounge as we watched the game, and I was sitting next to a couple of pals in there, and I think I might have been the most audible at reacting to the winner. So, but I don't regret a thing. It was brilliant. Loved it. And then, of course, the kind of final thing to touch upon before we go to part two and your thoughts and your questions in the chat box is this tonight's game that we watched, a quite ridiculous 4-4 draw at Stamford Bridge. Now, when we drew at Chelsea, a lot of the rhetoric was constantly about how this is a bad result for Arsenal and that Arsenal should have battered Chelsea, and that, we played poorly, and, it's a big sign of, Arsenal aren't the side that they were last season, and this Arsenal side can't compete for a title, and XYZ. I don't think that draw is that bad of a result. I don't think that draw is looking all that bad at all, to be honest. And I think that if Arsenal maybe had turned up for a little bit more than the 15 minutes than we did, and had maybe Chelsea had a teeny weeny little bit of bad luck that they didn't get because they were constantly just throwing in ridiculous goals that were so fluky, or getting penalties that weren't penalties, and not getting red cards that should have been red cards. I think that game will be looked back upon as a good point, especially if Arsenal are able to win at home against Chelsea. I think that game will be looked upon as a very good point at Stamford Bridge. But the game between Chelsea and Man City, my goodness me, what a great advert. I really moaned about Monday night's game last week about Spurs-Chelsea because it was a terrible game. It was good for the television, but in terms of football, it was a terrible football match. And people describe it as an advert for the Premier League. That's not an advert for the Premier League. That's not an advert for the... That is a deterrent of the Premier League. It's an awful game of football. This was a good game of football. This had everything. This had great goals. It had narrative. It had, penalties. It had VAR. It had kind of controversy. It had Jamie Carragher saying that something was categorically a handball when it hit a player in the face. It had everything. And ultimately, it ends up helping Arsenal quite a lot. And also, Cole Palmer's in my fantasy team. I say that because I know people that hate fantasy football listen in, like Mike, our good pal Mike, who hates fantasy football and hates the fact that anyone who supports another team could be quite happy when someone from another team scores a goal. I like just winding him up about it, to be honest, so I keep bringing it up. But, and there's the narrative, the irony that it's Cole Palmer that scores the fourth goal. Of course, another player that Pep Guardiola has let leave. Sterling, of course, scoring the first Chelsea goal. Just really, the second Chelsea goal. Really enjoyable game. Fantastic watch, great drama. And it obviously leaves the Premier League table looking very, very interesting indeed, because Arsenal now are just 1 point behind Manchester City, who sit on 28 points at the top of the league table. They play Liverpool next week. So Liverpool, who currently sit in second, and they sit in second for goals scored. I believe they've scored 27. Arsenal scored 26. That's the only reason why we're not in second place. title challenging Tottenham, who are top of the table no longer. They're in fourth in the league, and on 26. And then you got Aston Villa on 25 points. And then the biggest frauds of all, the biggest frauds in the entire league, more so, I think, even maybe than Spurs. And that takes some doing. But Manchester United are somehow sixth. I don't quite know how they're sixth, but they're sixth. And I think that speaks to the rest of the league. I mean, how you can sit as Eddie Howe and Newcastle and be behind Manchester, I don't know. I don't know how Newcastle are not in front of that Manchester United team who scraped by Luton Town this weekend, of course. So, yes, somehow Man United are the sixth best team at the moment in the Premier League, but they're still quite a way off the pack of teams that are at the top of the table. Aston Villa, of course, winning once again. Ollie Watkins also again getting on the score sheet. Arsenal play Aston Villa next month at the Villa Park. So that's obviously going to be a very, very interesting one. Yeah, I love that comment from Xhaka, my captain, in the chat box. Manchester United are in sixth, and I've got a goal difference of -3. -3. Like, to get a team that's got a worse goal difference than Manchester United, you've got to go down to 12th, which is Wolves. It's kind of crazy. Very, very crazy indeed. Anyway, we're going to go to part 2, and we're going to tackle your comments in the chat box right after this. All right, then. Yeah, let's jump into the chat, shall we? And tackle some of your thoughts from yesterday, because or from going forwards. Anything that you've got to talk about, anything you want to throw at me, throw it into the chat box, and we'll be tackling it as much as feasibly possible within reason. RKM says Liverpool are looking solid. They're tied with Arsenal and the fewest goals allowed. Do they have their midfield sorted? It looks like a three-way race, and I think that it's probably fair to expect it will be a three-way race, because Liverpool are an excellent football team, and last season they wasn't in it. They just didn't have the same kind of verve and attacking vigor, if you like, and they weren't able to kind of hold teams at bay, and they were disappointing, and that's why they fell out of the Champions League places. And they don't have Champions League football this season, so they can rotate more consistently in those midweek games if they want to. Salah's looking a lot better than he was last season. Salah is seemingly and has found his best form again. So yeah, Liverpool are very much involved. We're going to have to go to Anfield on the 23rd of December and avoid losing. I really think that if we're going to win the league this season, we're going to have to get a very good result against Liverpool in both games. And so we need to make sure that we can try and do that. Ben White says, and Ben White, thank you for joining me. So I hope that you recover very quickly. Chelsea are looking a force, Tom. Yeah, they're looking better. And as I said earlier on, as we were discussing, I think that point at Stamford Bridge is going to be something that maybe we look at more favourably. I think we're going to look at it a little bit more like a good point rather than 2 points dropped in the end. So they are looking better. I think they've got a good chance of finishing in the top 6 still, and they will start to push up the table as they continue to build this momentum going forwards. Nunan says, do you think that the rise in form for Trossard will cool our interest for a striker in January? I don't think there is any interest in a striker in January. Not okay, that might be too harsh. I can't foresee Arsenal signing a striker in January, and I couldn't foresee them signing a striker in January even before Trossard moved to centre forward. So those that were getting their hopes up about Arsenal signing a striker in January, I just don't think that's what Arsenal would be looking to do. I think that there are other areas that Arsenal would be looking to sign a player in well ahead of a centre forward in January. I think summer is much more likely for us to sign a striker then. I could be wrong, and I hold my hands up if I am. I just can't quite see it. So there you go. Ant says, Tom, I think the team needs to be commended to think that we are without the core of our squad, yet we haven't dropped off a great deal. And that's a credit to the team and to Arteta. Without question, this Arsenal team has always been in a situation where people aren't rating them. They're not clicking yet. They're not fluid. There's more to come from them. They're not good enough. They're not as good as last season. They're still learning. They're trying to integrate players. They've got too many injuries. And yet we sit 1 point off Manchester City, who we have beaten this season. You'd have to be mad to be criticising this club this year. Like genuinely mad, like something potentially wrong. I can't understand how anyone's brain can come to the conclusion that this is an Arsenal team that needs to be criticised this season, because what we have done, considering all of the things that have gone against us, be that VAR, horrendous errors, be that horrific injury luck that has cost us players in big games, like losing Saka against Man City and Martinelli not being able to start that game. You know, you'd have to be mad to be criticising or questioning this club this season. You really would. John says the goal difference will be very important come the end of the season. We need to score as many goals as possible against the bottom teams. No sitting back when we're 3 goals up. Yeah, I agree. I think obviously John was affected by the red card. We may have gone on to score a 4th or a 5th, but I think the red card obviously changed things for us. So I can't be too critical of the fact that we didn't win by more. But I think you're right. We do need to obviously just absolutely batter teams when we can. We're not going to get that opportunity all the time. So we need to try and take that if the opportunity arises. And we did that recently. We have done that. You know, we smashed PSV 4-0. We smashed Bournemouth 4-0. We smashed Sheffield United 5-0. We can do it. We are capable of doing it. So, yeah, I do think that's the way forward. Ames says, with 8 injuries, I'm really, really looking forward to this international break. Yes, I think, Ames, it comes at the perfect time for us. I think it comes at a time in which Arsenal can rest. We can recover. Odegaard can hopefully recover from whatever he's suffering from. Players like Gabriel Jesus will hopefully be back as well after the break, because there's, the Brazilian national side, I've called him up. Arteta did speak after the game and said he's not ready, so he was a bit befuzzled and confused and bemused by the fact he was called up. I don't think he will travel. I'd be surprised if he travels, because Edu's got obviously very good links with the Brazilian national side, so hopefully that gets sorted out. Let's see. Let's see on that one. But yeah, of course, we hope that gives us the opportunity to see players recover. Smith Rowe, of course, is still out as well. We don't really have too many in the way of details about that injury yet, and kind of a length of time. And Partey, of course, is apparently targeting late December as a potential return. But we'll have to wait and see if that one comes to the fore as well. Let's go to Salahuddin. Says fluidity is only known in physics. It's also an adjective. Ramsey says, is Trossard left wing version of Jesus? It feels very much like this to me. It's a really good comparison, actually. I like that. Jesus, I think, is much better as a centre forward, but also I think the fact he plays on the right, I don't really like Jesus on the left. And I think you're right, Rand said, yes, I think Trossard is a very similar, dynamic, creative, technical player, technical centre forward that can play out in that wide left position as well. Abu says, I would take another right wide forward. We've needed competition for Saka for quite some time. I agree. That is absolutely what I would do in January, is I'd sign a centre midfielder. And then if we've got the ability to do it, I'd go and sign a right-sided inverted player. Jay says, if you could buy one player in each position, who would they be? That's a hell of a question, Jay. That's a big, big question. That's asking me to sign a player in 11 roles. It would take me quite some time. But to be realistic, and I'll kind of repeat what I've said before, if I can sign players in January that are realistic, Yusuf Fofana would be my midfielder that I'd sign. If I could sign a centre forward, which I don't think we're doing in January, but at the moment, my mind is at Santiago Jimenez and Benjamin Sesko. They're the kind of ones that I'm looking at a bit more, and Victor Boniface. So they're the ones I'm really looking at. And then you've got the right wing, which I like Pedro Neto, but of course there is injury worries regarding him. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled on that one. Eloy says, hey Tom, first live show. Thanks for all the content. What are your thoughts on Zinny playing in midfield? Cheers from Florida. Zinny playing in midfield. I mean, he basically does the role now when he plays and starts at left back, doesn't he? He basically plays into midfield, and it is a role that I think suits him. He obviously plays it for Ukraine, and he plays it very well. So I think there is scope for it, but there wasn't scope for it really yesterday because Tomiyasu had to play because Ben White was out. And so if you're going to play Zinny in midfield, I think you probably play Tomiyasu there. But he obviously, in that game against Sevilla, he ended up in the right wing position when Saka came off at the end of the game. So he's a very versatile player who can do plenty of different things. Sabre says, am I the only one that's given up on Vieira? I feel like he's lacked something in terms of composure and consistency. I would rather upgrade on him. You're probably not the only one. No, I'm sure there's lots of people that gave up on him pretty early on in his career at Arsenal. But he had a really good start to this season and was making impacts from the bench. But there's just always a bit of a question mark about Vieira, about what he brings, about what he's going to bring in the future and whether he has a future at Arsenal. Is he another Lokonga? Is he another Tavares? Or is he, a player that could bloom maybe a little bit later on? Is he someone that we have to kind of keep faith with for a bit before they mature? I think, Tomiyasu and Ben White to some degrees have done that. I mean, Ben White obviously started off his time at Arsenal in quite questionable fashion with that Brentford game, but very quickly turned things around. But it's nowhere near as quick as it is for Vieira, So let's see. Let's see what happens with him. Alina says, Tom, do you think the atmosphere has gone down because of the Ashburton Army? I assume that's because they've limited the capacity of the Ashburton Army. I mean, correlation is not the same as causation. It's worth pointing out always. And just because they have limited the Ashburton Army's presence in the stadium doesn't necessarily mean because the atmosphere has got poorer this season that's the reason. But there is a correlation, but it doesn't mean that it is causation. So in my opinion, halving the size of it, I think the dip in atmosphere in the ground has been more than just half. I personally think this comes down to, I think it's a mindset. I think it's a mentality. I think that last season, it was such a surprise that we were in a title race. And stick with me on this, and I'll try and explain this theory as best I can. There was such a surprise and such a euphoria about Arsenal being in a title challenge, despite the fact that it didn't look like we would do that. I think that because there was such a hype around it, that every game was like, us against the world, and we're fighting for it. Everyone's really up for it, And this season, that's changed. The rhetoric around Arsenal has changed because there's an expectation. So when you play Burnley at home, you're expected to win. And it's not like when we go into a game against a team last season where, we were going up against Man City in our heads every single weekend and going against the odds. So there was a real kind of, it was a real visceral nature to the atmosphere every single game. But that hasn't been the case this season. And I do think that it's because people are kind of looking at this as a normality. I think says this here, positive vibes felt great, and now it's the norm. And I think this is a fair point. I think it probably falls in line with where my head's at. I think that people have kind of acclimatized to the fact that we're a team that competes for the title. And when you do that, every game isn't like you're facing Man City in your mind as fans. You then look at the opponent more. You look at who you're facing, and it's Burnley, and you're like, well, it's Burnley. We're going to win. And I'll be very honest, like there's been games this season that we have won comfortably. Sheffield United, we won 5-0. It was a really dull game. And I don't care because we won. And winning is always the most important thing. But it was a really dead game, that Sheffield United match that we won 5-0. The atmosphere was dead, and this Burnley game was dead. And I mean, even the Sevilla game, like the atmosphere from the Champions, I remember going into that game against PSV. I remember being in the crowd, being in the press box for the PSV game, and the Champions League music playing. That's washed away very quickly. So I'm going to say no. I don't think it is due. I think that there's definitely, you can't not say that there's been not some diminishment of the atmosphere because the Ashburton Army's presence has been decreased. You'd be lying if you said it hasn't decreased somewhat, because less of the noisiest people in the ground in the stadium means there is naturally going to be less noise. I also don't buy into the theory of the ballot being the reason behind why the atmosphere has kind of dipped. I've had a few people talk to me about that and suggest that's the reason. And I've replied saying, well, why? Can you provide more context to that? And what I hear and what is suggested to me is that the ballot system means that there are more tourists in the ground. Now, I, again, have a problem with this theory because I went to nearly every home game last season, and I can tell you that there were tourists at every single game I attended. And by the way, I want to make it clear, there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with someone from somewhere else in the world going to Arsenal. In fact, like calling them tourists is a little bit, I find it a little bit dismissive of them. They're not tourists. They're Arsenal fans, Some of them, sure. You might find the odd person that's gone to the game because they're going to see a football match. They've never seen that. And they might be going as a self-proclaimed tourist, in which case, fair enough. If that's what they call themselves, a tourist, then fine. But I think that there is a conflation because I think some people call fans from abroad tourists. at games. And in my head, that's wrong, because if you're from outside of London and you come to watch Arsenal, you're an Arsenal fan and you're coming to watch it because they're the club that you love, they're the club that you support. You're not a tourist. You're part of the family. That's how it works. So I don't get that argument, because, as I say, I was at last season, the atmosphere was great, and there were loads of people that came from outside of London to watch games, or there were people that were there with their selfie sticks. Not really. No one really uses selfie sticks anymore. They were there with their phones out in their hands, and the atmosphere was still great. So I don't think that theory works, And Anasimos says, "What is this waffle, Tom?" Don't see a waffle. Anyone see one? I don't see one. I wasn't waffling at all. I was being very succinct with what I was saying. Thank you very much. I don't think that that theory works personally. I think I've given a fair explanation as to why. Brad says, I sat next to a guy from the US that goes more games than me. We're just fans. Absolutely. I really hate it when there's this need to separate fans from one another. Like, I've been to more games than you, so I'm better than you. I'm more loyal than you. I deserve a ticket more than you. It's like, just that view can just kind of get in the bin for me. Like, I don't get why we need to. It's not a competition. Like, you're as much of an Arsenal fan as anyone else if you go to a game. If you support the club, if you've never been to a game in your life, I know plenty of fans that have not had that privilege of going to a game. They're as much of a fan as I am that goes to plenty. Like, it doesn't mean anything. And I'm very lucky because I'm in a very fortunate position at the moment of being able to do that. So, yeah, I don't really get that one. Don't get that one at all. Okay, says Tom's going full arse blog. Hey, look, if I'm going full Andrew, that's a compliment. I'll take that all day long. Says, have Brighton been found out? Puts perspective on always evolving. I mean, Brighton as a side are trying to evolve. And the problem that, we talk about always evolving, and I talk about it, with Arsenal. That's why you've brought it up, I'm assuming, But the difference between Brighton and Arsenal is that Arsenal don't lose all their best players every summer. Arsenal aren't constantly churning through talent and players and having to find, the little gems that they can get for 5 million, 10 million quid. They're now in a position, Brighton, where, they can't do that. They can't necessarily do that because they'll get not found out, but teams won't allow them to do that. They're Brighton now. They're Europa League Brighton. So if you're coming in as Europa League Brighton to a club and saying, I want this guy, we think he's great, we'll give you a few million. They're like, no, you're a Premier League club playing in Europe. You'll pay the premium. So at the end of the day, that's why they have to pay like 27 odd million. I know João Pedro's playing the Championship, but you know what I mean? Like, they're having to pay a significant amount of money for those players. So I don't know if it's about evolving. I think it's more to do with Brighton, because eventually, if you keep losing your best players every single season, you're going to feel the impact of that. So I get where you were coming from, but I think it's more to do with the fact that they just keep losing their best players over and over and over again. Levinate says, Tom, what are your thoughts on Serhou Guirassy? What your rumours are he might leave in January. My thoughts are that he's just not the right age profile for Arsenal. I think he's the type of player that I think you can see a mid-table Premier League team going in for, maybe a team down the bottom end of the Premier League going in for, because they think his goals will save them. He's having a brilliant season for Stuttgart, of course, but I don't think he's the right person for Arsenal. Archie says, Tom, where do you have your pre-match pints? I met Charles Watts in the fullback Saturday. I can't beat that spot for a pint. I mean, I work, so I'm not having a pint before the game. But I know plenty of fans, obviously, that go to the Tolly, that go to the 12 pins. Sometimes, if I'm walking past, I can poke my head in if I see someone I know. But that's usually, Archie, where people, I think, congregate and stuff like that. But Charles loves a pre-match pint, even when he doesn't want one. Can tempt him into getting one. John says, Brighton, losing players every season means no chance to build a project where players gel more and more into a cohesive team every season is back to the drawing board, aka pointless. Yes, it's very difficult to do that. And that's why they don't want to sell those players. That's why Matoma and Ferguson have signed brand new contracts. That's why that's happened. DMZ says, rumours on Tony. Again, I mean, I don't want to talk about Tony. Do I have to talk about Tony every single show? Everyone knows my thoughts on Tony by now. You can recite them. like the Lord's Prayer. You can recite them now perfect. I mean, every word of the Lord's Prayer sticks in my mind from my childhood, and you should be able to now recite Tom's words about Tony without question. Forever an Arsenal fan says, "Hey Tom, will you be watching the live action Last Airbender show on Netflix?" No, I didn't watch it as a kid. You can judge me what you like. I know it's very popular. It just wasn't something I watched, so no. But again, I don't mind answering these social questions. King says, Tom, would you take Neves on a 6-month loan as he can play to 6 and the 8? Yes, I would. I would take Neves on a 6-month loan. I think it's a no-brainer. If you can do that, if you can get Ruben Neves on loan until the end of the season, do it. Put an option in there to buy, and yeah, do that deal. RKM says, it was a compliment. I watch you every morning with my coffee from the US, North Carolina, and that was top-level waffle. My wife even knows your intro. Hello and welcome. Yes. And I'm sure at our live event on the 22nd of February, I'll be doing that as well. Ticket information to come out in the next week or two. Let's go to Ems says, hi, Tom. Do you think Douglas Luiz is right for Arsenal, or should we look at Zubamendi? I think that of the two, it's better that we go for a more like box-to-box midfielder, because I think Rice's future is very much at 6. And I know he's playing 8 now. I think he's doing a great job. And I think he can play that role. And I think when he picks the ball up and takes it off opposition players in the opponent's half, I'm like, what can't this guy do? He's amazing. He's world class. And there's no one that can now, oh, goodness me. Every time I talk about Declan Rice, it makes me think back to the summer where I had to argue with fans in my comment section saying that, why are we spending 100+ million on Rice? We've got Partey. Why are we spending all this money on this guy? He's average. You go back through the comments in the summer of our transfer shows, you will find plenty of people that left comments like, we don't know. When the saga for Rice was going on and we bid 100 million, we're like, why are we bidding this much? This is silly. It's not worth it. Where are these people holding their hands up? Where are these people coming back and saying, I was wrong? He's world class. I'm so glad we bought him. Come on, show it. But yeah, I think that's why I'd rather someone like Luiz, because I just think that, I'm not saying Luiz is the guy, because I'd rather a Fofana, but I think we're better going for the box to box, because I think we're lacking that ever since we lost Xhaka. I think we've lost that kind of presence as a box to box midfielder that can do it in both directions since he left, and we haven't replaced that. So I think that's important to consider. Sabre says, what do you think of people saying that Palmer is the best left-footed attacker in the league this season? It's nonsense. He scored a lot of penalties. He's been good. You can't say he hasn't been good. You can't say that he wouldn't have been a good signing for us. I think Cole Palmer's proven that he would have been a good signing for us in the short space of time that we've had him. He's been better than Havertz. There's no much argument about that. Has he been better than Odegaard's? Maybe. I mean, Odegaard's still got, how many goals this season? Still, I think 5, something like that. He's also had penalties like Palmer. Are you saying are you including, if you're saying left-footed attackers, are you including Saka in that? Are you including Salah in that? Are you including Haaland in that? Very, very difficult, isn't it? Very difficult to suddenly be as broad, as vague as that. So there you go. DMD says Arsenal women 6 goals in the second half. Utterly fantastic. If you haven't seen Caitlin Ford's goal, please go and check it out. Fantastic strike and finish. And says Tom's dream transfer in January, Tony and Douglas Luiz. It's like you can read me like a book, Ant. You know my thoughts inside and out. Malcolm says no one cares about the women's team. Malcolm, I care, and a lot of people here care. And if you don't, it's your choice. Go spout your bollock somewhere else. I really couldn't give a toss for it. Old Dave says the difference between Caicedo and Rice is astounding. Even a tourist can tell the difference. The irony. I think when it comes down to what Caicedo's doing at Chelsea, he's going to be very much kind of a grower in the team. I think he's going to be somebody that has to kind of acclimatise to that level at Chelsea. I know that they're performing under a level that Brighton are, ironically, but I think that I think Caicedo will become very, very good. But I think Rice is a better player, and I'm glad that we signed him over the Ecuadorian international. And Simos says, yes, finally caught the women's game. Very impressed with the second half. Could have had 10. Absolutely. And apologies that this show kind of crossed over with that as well. It's been impossible to schedule it anywhere else, and I wanted to make sure I got this out for you guys before tomorrow. Alina says, Tom, what are your thoughts on Mark Goldbridge? We're getting all the random questions. I like it. You can throw your questions at me. I don't mind talking about this. I like Mark. I disagree with some of his points of view. I disagree with some of his actions. But I think he defends Arsenal quite well at times. I think he's entertaining. I quite like watching back the Mark Goldbridge Clips Twitter account. Mark's been on the show. I've chatted with Mark. He's a nice guy. He's a nice fella. So yeah, I quite like Mark Goldbridge. So yeah, he's very entertaining. I haven't really got a bad word to say about him at all. Fahim says, hi Tom, just a general question, not necessarily Arsenal, but the way fullbacks are playing now, do you still believe a right footer playing right back and a left footer at left back will no longer be the norm? It's a good question, Fahim. And I think that we will see a lot less and less of it being kind of just the assured thing that a right footer will be on the right. I think it's more to do with profile, more to do with philosophy, system, style, profile, all those things. I think, where a manager wants to put you, as long as you can perform in that role and you can do the duties that you've been asked to do, doesn't necessarily matter. I used to talk a lot about kind of the reason behind why you have a right footer on the right and a left footer on the left in terms of centre backs. But for fullbacks, I think centre backs, there's a lot more reasons to play a more natural-sided footed player on the right side in centre half positions, but far less for fullbacks, because the role has changed so considerably. Mark Goldbridge's reactions when United lose are the funniest. Although I have to say, I did enjoy Expressions' video from the Wolves game. I did enjoy watching that. That was very. Andre says, what are your thoughts on pineapple on pizza? Andre, honestly, mate, you're lucky to still be in the chat box asking me that question. As an Italian foods lover, I adore it. It's my number one go-to. As I said, I had a pizza before I came on it. Yeah, just no. It's just wrong. It's just wrong on so many levels. Like, it's just, yeah, no. And you know what? I learned something the other day that really bugs me. And this is so trivial. Like, you're actually going to be so annoyed I've even brought this up. But some of you will do this. And it links into this question about Italian food, right? If you keep tomatoes, yeah, this is where we're going. If you keep tomatoes in the fridge, nah. Nope. No. Tomatoes don't go in the fridge, guys. Don't put your tomatoes in the fridge. If you've learned anything from today's show, this is a very serious football podcast, obviously, where we talk objectively and honestly and clearly and thoughtfully about football. If you take one thing away from today's show, it's that you don't put tomatoes in the fridge. You just don't do it. Okay? So for those that know that they're watching this and sitting in that fridge, take them out. Take them out of your fridge and put them on the side. That's where they belong. Honestly, goodness me. Just a friend of mine said that I was around someone's house and they took them out, and I was like, "What are you doing? What the hell are you? Why am I still going on about tomatoes? Let's move this on." Rob says, any idea? Let's bring this back to football. Any idea when 115 FFP charges will A, finally go to court, and B, get through the appeals, and C, City get penalised, and D, will titles be taken away with other measures? Rob, I can answer all those questions with one very simple answer, and you know what it is. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know when it will go anywhere. I don't know if it will get appealed. I don't know if they'll get penalised. I don't know what the ramifications of it will be. What I do know, and what I can tell you, is that we are a long way of finding out about it. We are a long way off finding out about it. So yeah, do not hold your breath to get an answer on that one, because we're a long way away from it. Godwin says, is Ivan Toney just a tall version of Nketiah? He does not have the collaboration that is needed to require in an Arteta system. I don't know. I think saying he's a taller Nketiah is a bit harsh. Toney is better than Nketiah. I'm not going to sit here and say that. I think that they're very similar statistics, of course, and we talked about on the channel, which is one of the arguments I have for not wanting to sign him necessarily. But there's no bones about it. He's a better player than Nketiah. He's more developed, he's more matured, he's more senior than Nketiah, and that shows in his games. He also spreads his goals across more matches as well. But you're right, Godwin, in the sense that Arteta needs a striker that needs to do more, and neither Nketiah nor Toney have in my view, those they don't have those qualities, so it becomes much trickier to achieve. David says, sorry if this has already been brought up. Oh, you don't need to apologise. But do you think Arteta has a less favourable opinion of Vieira now, possibly the beginning of the end? No, I don't think so. I think Arteta accepts that some players do make mistakes. It's when they make those mistakes over and over and over again that it becomes a problem for Arteta. So, no, I don't think that red card would have changed too much in the mind of Arteta. But I could be wrong. I don't think it would have changed too much in the mind of the coach, to be fair. Archie says, Tom, why did you keep the channel name TGT? I remember seeing you on as a guest back in the day, and I can't remember the old host name. Craig is who hosted it. Why did I keep the channel name? I'd never even thought about changing it. A lot has changed about the channel since 2015, 2016, yeah. But yeah, I just kept it the same. I didn't need to change it. I like it. I like the name. It was obviously people knew about it, so that was obviously a good foundation. So yeah, I didn't need to change it. But we've been doing this 7 years now. You know, we've been doing this a really, really long time, and we might be going through some even the biggest. I think that personally, in the next year, you might see the biggest change. My prediction is that you'll see the biggest change that you've ever seen on this channel will be coming in the next year. Don't worry, we're not changing. I think nothing's going anywhere. The 8 a.m. shows aren't going anywhere, that's for sure. As long as I have my way, they will always exist. I have to say that I'd never ever considered changing the name. There's never a thought that crossed my mind, because it was almost, if anything, it was almost like the channel has been. It was always there for some people as their first interaction. Imagine if it's the first Arsenal channel you ever came across, and Craig was hosting the show, and obviously I might have been a guest on some of the ones that you might have seen, and it was your first ever Arsenal channel. Imagine if you got really attached to that, and then some guy comes in, takes over, because for those, I'm very open and always have been about what happened with the channel. Craig was in a position where he couldn't do it, and he wanted to spend more time with family and things like that. So, and he asked if I wanted to keep it going, and I said yeah, sure, and the rest is history. But yeah, imagine if it was your first Arsenal channel you watched, and all of a sudden this guy comes in, changes the name, changes everything. I feel like if anything, it was a respect to what Craig had started by keeping the name as is. So yeah, if I just come in and called it the Tom Talk, I mean, who's going to listen to that? No one. So yeah, there you go. TGT forever, whatever the weather. Yes, that is our slogan. No, it's not. We don't have a slogan. I guess we do. I guess it's as always up the Arsenal is probably our slogan. Fahim says, "What's your favourite Italian dish?" Cacio e pepe is my favourite. It's without question the best one that there is. Calzone is also great, Sin. Yes, it very much is. DMD says the deflect effect. Have I deflected from a question? I don't think I've deflected from a question, have I? Or maybe you're talking about the City charges, maybe potentially that's what you're on about. Forever an Arsenal fan says Spurs could lose every game this month and they'd still probably find a way of giving Ange manager of the month. Very much so, my friend. Mark, good to see in the chat box, mate. I hope you'll be attending our live show on the 22nd of February. I know Mark loves a live event, so I'm hoping that he's going to come along. Would you like to see Florian Wirtz at Arsenal? It's difficult to see Arsenal adding another attacking midfielder, to be honest, isn't it? Because we've got so many. Odegaard, Smith Rowe, Vieira, Havertz. I suppose Trossard could also play there. I suppose you could, we've got obviously young players coming through, Ethan Oneri. So it's very difficult to see us signing like a Florian Wirtz. I can't see that happening. Just not. Yeah, I really can't see that happening. James says, very simple, man. I like it. You got to keep things simple. You don't want these complicated things. When you start complicating things, it's more likely things can go wrong. So Cacio e pepe is going to steer you in the right direction. SJ says, lol, my pet Spuds fan now and Big Ange sacked and going into meltdown. Hilarious. I was trying to read that and understand it. If they want Ange sacked now, goodness me, they're in for a wild ride. A very, very wild ride. RKM says, and Tom, finally, since you were channeling your inner Andrew, would you rather be forced to eat chilled tomatoes on waffles or wear a Spurs shirt? Obviously, eat the chilled tomatoes on waffles. Like, there are very, very few things, if any, that would make me pull that monstrosity on. It was actually like a rule at my stag do, because I have a few Spurs friends. Yeah, it's a terrible admittance, I know. But I have a few Spurs friends, and I said categorically, I'm like, look, it's pretty it's pretty open, this stag do, but you can't you cannot put a Spurs shirt on me. It's just no. I was like, with the channel, with the following, with the job, I can't have a picture. I can't have anyone with a picture of me with a. It's just the meme. I don't need that meme. I don't need to be in like a debate with a Spurs fan and they can just whip that out. I don't need, I don't need that in existence. So yeah, no, not at all. Um, T Fisher says, Tom, that was a really inappropriate response. Embarrassing. To what? What are you talking about? Is it the tomato question? Maybe it was a tomato question. See, Alina says, Tom, do you think Eddie will leave? I think eventually, yes. I think he will probably go. So yes, I do think he will probably move on. Mark says, I do love a live event, Tom, and I will defo be at the next one. I'll bring some cakes. Oh, I love, yeah. I mean, I'll eat as very little of it as I can. Still going to be on the diet by then. You know, as a friend of mine sent me a video. I don't know, I'm being coy about it. Owen Young, you know him from our Eat Sleep Arsenal Repeat. He sent me the video today of the for those that have been listening to the channel for a little while, you know, I made like an edit of kind of a compilation, if you like, of the channel up until I got my job in last year, 2022. And it was kind of just trying to raise my spirits a little bit. And he said, watch this and just smile about it. And I was like, okay. Like, I just remember watching it back and seeing when it fades away and it's just me talking a year ago. And I'm like, it did make me realize, actually, you know, when I put the kind of the picture of me side by side with what I looked like a year ago, I can see like it's working. So I am very happy with the progress that we've made, and I talk about it very openly and honestly on our fitness podcast, the Eat Sleep Arsenal Repeat podcast. Yeah, I was really anti, you know, not anti, but just I was lazy, you weren't doing enough, and very happy to commit to it, and I think it has certainly helped. Una said, did you see Endo's tackle today? In my opinion, it's far more dangerous than Vieira's, but it wasn't even a yellow. Okay, I'm going to be a bit controversial here. I don't think that was a red card. And I don't think I want to see that challenge given a red card. I think it's one of those where like those types of tackles are going to happen in games. 50-50s going for the balls. Like I don't think I want to see red cards given for that. So I wasn't upset with that challenge. I think the Vieira one is always going to give you a red card because the foot's coming down, the studs are showing in that sense in a downward motion, whereas the sliding tackle, it's kind of it was a horizontal kind of motion. It's different. So yeah, I think I don't think I want to see that as a red card. I really, really don't. Let's go up a little bit more. Archie says, "Bring back the Foles intro." I'd love to, but it's more about like copyright and stuff like that. You know, I know there's kind of like fair use and like the amount of time that music plays for, but you don't want to get into that. Like we have, what do they call it? Royalty-free music. I say that I bought it. I bought the rights to use the music we have in the intros. Yes, I did find the most drum and bass one I could find, and even then it's pretty tame. Yeah, I love Foles. People know I love Foles as well as drum and bass. Very different types of music, but yeah, you got to love the Runner. Excellent track. If you've not listened to it, it's on FIFA. You probably heard it. I knew it way before it was on FIFA. But the Runner by Foles is an excellent track. And then it says, Tom, where do you do your streams? StreamYards. StreamYards is what we use, and it's never let us down, has it, guys? Never. I'm definitely not lying. No, this isn't the face of someone that's not telling the truth. It's never let us down. StreamYard is great. I love it. I really wish I wasn't married to the idea of never using anything else like I absolutely am, because I'm stubborn. So there you go. But yeah, the StreamYard is what we use to stream stuff. And Front Row says Albatross remains the best Foles song, and I can't disagree too much. I love that tune as well. It is. I mean, Wake Me Up was played at my wedding, so I have obviously an attachment to that. But Albatross is probably the next one along. For those that like it now, they're like, "This is an Arsenal podcast. Why are you talking about Foles for?" That's what people are going to be saying in the comment section. Mark says, "Agree, Tom. 2 feet leaving the ground is different. But I love the art of a good sliding tackle like Saliba has done in the last couple of games. Yeah, I mean, if you give Endo a red card for that challenge, yeah, it's like you're saying you can't slide tackle anymore. Like, I don't think that should be. I just don't think that it should be a red. It's just no way that it should be a red card at all. It just shouldn't. Ant says, Tom, what is the title of the intro tune for the channel? It's a great question. It doesn't have a name. I mean, I have it on my other laptop as a file. Send me a DM on socials and I'll find it for you if you're desperate, Ant. But yeah, it's like a weird royalty-free track, so it's not like an easy track and artist type thing. So there you go. Let's go to, and it says, Tom, I saw you yesterday outside the Armory. That's not creepy at all. I saw you. Yes, I often go past the Armory because it's where the media entrance is. Anasimos says, I think we're okay in the decision because we won. I don't think no contact challenges deserve a red. If he got him, that would have been DF. Deserved? Is that? I don't know. Again, yeah, I just don't think Endo deserved a red card for that challenge whatsoever. And Awere is pointing out that we've been going for an hour. Thank you for pointing that out. That is an incredibly long time, and we probably should stop there. So if anyone doesn't want us to stop, you can message Awere and say he stopped the show. I'm only joking. Leave him alone. It's been a great pleasure to talk with you, as it always is. I'll be back tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. bright and early. I promise there will be an 8 a.m. show unless something mad happens. Yes, I am planning to do an 8 a.m. show. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening, for tuning in. It's always appreciated. Your support is always unrivaled and extremely appreciated. So if you could drop a like and subscribe, I and the channel community, of course, would appreciate it. As you can see, I'm in a better mood today than I have been. I've had a weekend that has just perked me up a bit more. Last week was terrible, and as I say, I'm probably going to be able to talk about the reasons as to why it was soon, and I'm probably going to have some down moments again in the next month and a bit. So, as I say, when I can talk about the reasons behind it all, I will. It sucks at the moment, and I wish I could. When you're in that thing where you just kind of want to scream into a pillow, but you don't. You want to scream out your window. It's been like that a little bit recently, so I hope that I can bring it to you and talk to you about it more soon. But let's focus on the positives, which was that it was a great weekend of football. Arsenal won, Spurs embarrassed themselves, City dropped points, Manchester United only scraped by Luton. And yeah, I think you got to focus on the positives, didn't you? You got to focus on there's more to life than Arsenal. There's more to life than football even. You'll be surprised to hear me say. Spend time with family and friends, and it really, really does help your mood. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. I will see you, as I said, tomorrow morning, bright and early at 8 a.m. Have a fantastic rest of your evening, day, afternoon, morning, wherever you happen to be in the world. And as always, up the Arsenal.